talk about email marketing because I know that a lot of people are really into social media for how to get in touch with people, but I cannot stress enough the power of an email list. An email list is a completely different beast because when people get an email, they have to look at it. The thing about social media is depending on the algorithm or how often you check your account or how often people post, it's actually quite likely that you could miss something. And email is a completely different thing because it's definitely there. People have to acknowledge it. Now, that said, though, you can't abuse that power with an email list, and you cannot use an email list the way that you use social media. It's a completely different thing. So, my first thought is that you need to use an email marketing platform. Don't just make an email list in your Gmail and just email people like that. That is a bad idea for a lot of different reasons, but also the email marketing platforms, most of them are free unless you get to a really, really high number of subscribers, which for a lot of individual artists is probably not going to be the case. I happen to use MailChimp. I'm sure there are many other options out there, but I think MailChimp allows you to have quite a few people before they start charging. So I really recommend you guys look into that. I think an email list should be on your contact list on your website. So on my contact page on my website, I have my email. I have a link to an email list where you can click on it, takes you to an external link, and then you can sign up for the email list there. And you can customize your email sign up list as much as you want. You can ask people what their favorite color is. You can ask for a zip code. In my opinion, the best way to do it is just as little information as possible. First name, last name, email address, that's all you need. Keep it real simple because once people start to notice, oh my gosh, there's all this stuff I got to fill out, it becomes a really big pain in the butt. And then people go, oh, I can't be bothered to fill it out. So don't do that. Thanks, you guys, for tuning in. Tia Corrette, Allison Edwards, Melanie Morales, and Lisa H., and Gina Badeau. I'm so happy, you guys, that these career advice videos are helping you because you know what? If I can save you the grief and all the time it took me to figure this stuff out by myself, I am happy to do that because I just don't think people should have to reinvent the wheel. If somebody else has figured it out, we should just give it to you. Okay, now here's where you cannot abuse your email list. You really have to avoid the temptation to email people whenever something happens to you because an email list, you don't want to use it that much. People are very sensitive about being on email lists. And I have to tell you, if I get an email from an artist more often than once every 3 months, it really makes me want to unsubscribe. It's very different than other things. Like, for example, I subscribe to this chef who has a newsletter and he sends it every single month. And I know to expect it, but it's a newsletter. It's like I actually get to read something. It's like getting an article. But if you're an individual artist and you're just trying to say, hey, I'm having a solo show, that is not something you want to do all the time. And I can tell you when people send me stuff more than once a month, it's like unsubscribe, unsubscribe. So don't abuse this power. Now, I think a major event that is worthy of an email list, if you have a solo show, that's a pretty big deal. When you're an artist, definitely send an email for that. If you have a major press article, I'm not talking in the school newspaper. I'm talking about a major newspaper that has national prominence, something like that, which is a big deal for a lot of people. That is okay to put in an email list. These are the things you should never email people about. And I have gotten these emails. Don't do it because I unsubscribed almost immediately. And you don't want to piss people off, okay? The other thing about the email list that you have to remember, people have to sign up for it. You cannot put people on your email list. That is really not cool. And if you do that, wow, you're going to get some pissy emails. Do not do that. So I know people are really wanting to have a bigger list and have greater reach. But the thing is, though, if you try to do that too much, it can really backfire and then people are very frustrated. So these are the things we don't want to know about. If you're in a group show, if you updated your website, if you started an Instagram, you sold a painting, I mean, group shows, I think it sort of depends on who you are a little bit and where you are in your career. So let me actually take that back. For me, a group show is not really a big fuss because I've done so many of them. But if you're just getting started and you haven't shown anywhere, that sort of is a big deal. So I would say in that instance, that's probably okay. When you send a email, short and sweet. Do not go on and on and on because people don't like it. Unless I know that I'm expecting something that's really well written, like a newsletter, from somebody who I know is a good writer, I'm not going to want to read it. Usually it ends up being really rambly without a lot of information. The other cool thing about the email marketing platforms, it's so easy to customize the email. I mean, you can do an image group, you can add social media icons, you can add dividers and text and video. It's so easy. And on MailChimp, it's like click and drag. It is not difficult at all. So I really recommend using a marketing platform. Puck is saying, what if the group show is the first show you're doing? Yep, exactly. So if you don't have a lot of experience and you don't have a super long exhibition history like I do, then yes, I would send an email. I guess I was thinking too much from my point of view. So sorry about that. Okay. This is an example of an email that I might send to people. Dear friends and colleagues, I recently produced a video lesson about brush pen drawings I did while traveling with my family in Taiwan. Hope you'll take a look. That's it. Don't say anything more. Because when it goes on and on and on, I think people get annoyed very fast. And so even if they wanted to look at it, they won't because they're so judgmental about emails. I think that people are way more sensitive about email because it's almost like you're invading their space. But with social media, they come to you. So it's a very different action. And you have to think about it that way. That's why for email lists, honestly, I probably send out 1, maybe 2 a year. I mean, if something really special happens, maybe I'll send 3. But I don't know that I've ever sent more than 3 or 4 a year because I just know it's your secret weapon. You can't use it all the time or it's going to backfire on you. Another really compelling reason to have an email marketing platform is you have to give people the option to unsubscribe. Now, some people, their first reaction to this is, yeah, but don't you want to keep people on your email list as much as possible? Don't you not want to give them that option because then they can opt out? But see, here's the thing. You don't want people on your list who don't want to be there because then they're really annoyed with you a lot. And the fact that you can't get off the list without going and emailing you saying, please remove me, which is so socially awkward, which a lot of people just really don't want to do. It's not cool. So the thing about unsubscribe, which is really nice, is the people, they just get the email, they click unsubscribe and they're done. I can tell you that if you want to know, you can find out who unsubscribed because all of these email platforms in the statistics, they will actually tell you who unsubscribed. They sometimes give them an option. So they say, okay, here's why I unsubscribed. I will tell you guys, though, don't pay attention to that because I used to pay attention to that for a while. And honestly, it just depressed me because for a while, I kept thinking, oh my gosh, every time I send out an email campaign, a whole bunch of people subscribe. I must be doing a terrible job with my email campaign. And then I talked to somebody later who also was running a similar platform and they had a big email list. And she said, oh, no problem. That happens all the time. I was like, really? She's like, yeah, people always are unsubscribing with every single campaign. And then I realized, okay, this is not because I'm a terrible person and I'm sending out horrible emails. It's just that's what people do. They sign up and they unsubscribe. So don't take it as any offense. Not a bad thing to do. Another thing that is really cool about the email marketing platforms is you can look at all the statistics you want. Every single email campaign that you give out, there's a report. They tell you what number of emails got opened, which links they clicked on. I mean, it's way more information than anybody needs to know about their email, but it's there. And some people find it interesting because it does sometimes help you formulate a strategy for how you want to contact things. Okay, an email signature is a really quick, easy way to get people to look at your website without being invasive, because nobody likes the check out my website thing. That's really pushy and annoying. And so if you get an email from me, I will have my name, my title, information about where I teach, and then I just put a link to my website at the bottom. And I've had people literally say to me, people I had never contacted before, oh, I looked at your website, nice work. And so it's just a way of putting the information out there without bothering people. The one thing I will say though, you guys have to keep these email signatures short, okay? Because in theory, if you have done a good job with your website, you should not have to link every single website you have on that email signature. I've seen people do that, where it's like they list their email, their website, their social media, everything. And it gets really long and busy and it looks terrible. So I really recommend keeping it short and sweet. That's pretty much enough. It also makes you look more legitimate. I also think students are doing this as well. I see a lot of students, they'll write, Wellesley College, class of 2020, physics major. And sometimes that's helpful too, because then you can figure out right away when you get an email from somebody who they are. And so I just think everybody should have an email signature because it really, really helps out a lot. I really think it's a good habit to get into documenting your work all the time. Cannot tell you how many students say to me, oh yeah, I know, I should be more on top of it. Oh my goodness, I haven't done that in so long. And so what happens is if you don't document your work on an ongoing basis, it becomes really overwhelming. It becomes something that you dread. And when you do get down to doing it, it's a huge pain. And then it takes you forever and ever and ever because you have to photograph so many different artworks and it just gets really ridiculous. So I just recommend you guys, it's a lot easier to do a little bit at a time on a continuous basis than to let all those images build up. And sometimes you don't have time. Like sometimes somebody will email me and they'll say, hey, I need images for this. I need it in 2 days. And I have a big archive, so it's easy for me. But if you get that email, it's like panic time because you're like, oh my God, I have to get these images to this person in 48 hours. I need to get a camera. I need to do all these things. It's just too much. All right. Now, if you guys need help photographing your artwork, we do have this page, which is on tutorials on artprof.org. And we have information here. We have examples and step-by-step information on how to photograph your artwork because it's not difficult, but there's a lot of tricks you need to know. And a lot of those tricks are not easy to figure out on your own. And they take forever, and you should not have to do that, in my opinion. We also have another page that is specifically on how to photograph 3D artwork, because trust me, that's a whole other can of worms, which is a lot trickier, and which I think a lot of people really, really struggle with. So take a look at those two pages. What you end up doing is you get a really nice photo archive. And so what I do, I don't just shoot pictures of the artwork when it's finished. I have photos of my studio, I have works in progress, basically anything that I could use for publicity, for social media, to send to a gallery curator. It's just really good to keep building this up because I've been doing this for so long now that it's not a problem for me to find photos. Like when people ask me for stuff, I can send it in 2 seconds. I don't have to think twice. Yeah, we probably should do a video on how to photograph artwork. It's just tricky because the setup's a little bit challenging. I'm going to have to think through exactly how to do that because I know a lot of people need help with that. By the way, if you guys want to know about social media and photographs and what types of photographs you may want to be taking to use on social media for your portfolio, for your artist website, watch this lecture because this lecture gives you guys everything you need to know about preparing content for social media. Let's talk really briefly about commissions. We are doing a stream later this month. Me and Jordan McCracken Foster, who's another teaching artist here at Art Prof, he and I are going to talk really deep on commissions. But I'm just going to give you guys a couple hints because I know people really want to know a little bit about that. Ripple of Aqua is saying, how important is works in progress photos in the grand scheme of your portfolio? Work in progress is not important for your website. You can have it, but you don't need to. I would really say the work in progress photos, those are most important for social media. That's really where they belong. You don't really need it for publicity. Like if I was having a solo show, I would not need that. All I need is the finished artwork. But works in progress photos, they're really popular on social media. They help people get to know you better. So I really recommend having those. Okay, commissions. Really basically, because I know there's so many versions of commissions. For example, I know Jordan's been doing some commissions for character designs. I've done portrait commissions before. Those are two totally different universes, but I do think there are some fundamental things that are really quite similar that cross over no matter what type of commission work you're making. I think if you can, I know this is not always possible, meet your client face to face. This makes such a big difference, you guys, because at least for me, when I was doing portrait commissions, I had to do it locally because there wasn't another way to do it. Because I paint from life, I use photographs as well, but I do both. I really like to meet the people. I like to get to know them a little bit better. But I just found that people are nicer when they're face to face. They actually have a filter and they're less likely to say horrible things to you over email, which for some reason everybody thinks is cool. So I really recommend that if you're doing commission, meet face to face. It makes a big difference. You get to know the client. It's way, way better. Okay. Thing about clients, you guys, no matter what they're doing for you, this could go for someone who commissions an illustration, someone who commissions a portrait, somebody who wants a logo. This really is across the board what all commissions are like. Basically, clients don't know what they want. I know that sounds crazy because you think, oh, well, they want a logo for their company and their company is a beer company. Of course they know what they want. No, they don't. The only thing they know what they want is what they don't want, and they won't know what that is until they've actually seen it. So if you ask them, well, what is it you're not looking for? They have no idea. They will not be able to give you anything concrete or usable until they have something they can actually look at. And so this basically, it puts you in a rock and a hard place. It's really, really bad. So this is the hardest part I think about working on commission. Clients also know nothing about the process. They don't know anything about sketching. They don't know about how long things are going to take. They don't know anything about media. And so it's really up to you to instruct them about the process. Like I actually have a schedule that I put together when I do portrait commissions about, okay, week 1, week 2, this is when this happens. We're going to do that. If you don't do that, you're in big trouble. It's going to be a real hassle. Haley Michelle is saying, how do you not hate your own artwork? I'm really struggling right now. You know what, Haley? I think a lot of us hate our own artwork. I think that's really common. And if you're feeling that way, I bet you anything, other people feel that way. Tell me in the chat, you guys who are watching right now, if you've ever been at a point where you hated your artwork, and give Haley some suggestions for what to do about it, because we probably need to do a whole stream just about that. So I'm not going to go off on a tangent because we're talking about business tips, but help out Haley in the chat, guys. That would be really great. Puck says, lots of training for this point from my mom. Her motto is, quote, I don't know what I want, but I'll know when I see it. Yep, it's a guessing game. And you have to throw them 100 things before they know it when they see it. And even then they don't know. Like, here's an example. I knew this person who was an art director at an advertising agency. And she said that they had this client and they went through this whole process. They showed them the sketches. They showed them exactly what they were going to do. And the client said, okay, great, go do it. They went and they did it. They showed it to them. And the client said, I don't like it. And they said, we did exactly what you asked for. And they said, I just don't like it. So nothing is guaranteed at all. Guilherme Harrison saying, my God, I worked in design for a decade. This is so true. Really wish you were my teacher. Yes. I mean, there are so many horror stories online about just terrible clients just really being awful to the artists that they work with. They really just, no shame when it comes to being a jerk. So here's why, when you guys do commissions or get into any type of contract or work, you got to protect yourself. And wow, it's a lot of work to protect yourself. This is not something that you can pull off, and you got to put your foot down. I think I get a lot of students who call me in a panic when they get a commission and they go, oh my God, I don't know what to do. How do I do this? Am I charging too much? Am I charging too little? And it's really, really hard on them. And I think a lot of people are afraid to ask for good pay as opposed to not minimum wage. And I just think that it's one of the hardest things for artists is to really protect themselves. I think it's very, very difficult. Joey Meyer says, I've used Trello for client work for many years. It helps put the client in your shoes, allow them to see the steps that go into it. I should make a blank one for the Art Prof Discord. That would be fabulous, Joey. I'd be very interested to see what that looks like. I haven't used Trello much. I know what it is, but I don't know the ins and outs of how that works. But that would be really great because I think people would love to see a sample of exactly what that looks like. Okay, here's our favorite phrase in the art field. Question is, should you do it for the exposure? Okay, now there are many, many answers to this question, and it's very personal. It depends on the job, it depends on the situation, it depends on you and where you are in your life. For example, what I would charge today is not what I would have charged 20 years ago because I was half my age and half the experience, and so I was not worth the same amount. However, I do know there were times in my life where I really did not charge enough, considering the skill and the amount of time that it went into. And a lot of the times people really abuse artists for the exposure, and it drives me up the wall. And I still get stuff like this where people are like, can we use your drawing? We'll promote your website. We'll link to your Instagram on the social media. I'm like, really? So, okay, I'm going to do all the skilled work for free and you're going to put my social media on your website? Like, thanks. That's great exposure. So it's really annoying, and you guys have to figure out when it's worth it. Because I have definitely been in a situation where I've asked people to do things for me as a gesture of goodwill, oftentimes for art prof. I'm doing that right now, actually. But it's a little bit different when it's paid work. And I know a lot of people really want the exposure and they want to be seen. But you know something? Anybody who tells you you should do something, quote, for the exposure has never really been that helpful. The people that I think are in a position to actually truly advance your career in a substantial way, they're not going to ask you to do that because they're high up enough on the food chain to know that that's not cool. It's not good to ask people to do that. So I really recommend you guys not to do that. And it's also, I think, somewhat of a disservice to other artists because then you send the message that it's okay for them to tell you that. And that's not good either. Now think about it this way. It's like if you were a hairstylist, like would you go to a hairstylist and say, please cut my hair, I'll give you lots of exposure, I'll put your Instagram on my website? Like you would never say that. Would you say that to a doctor? Would you please do my surgery? I'll tell my friends about you. Like that is not how it works, you guys. Don't do that. Puck says, I charge for any changes after an X amount. This often stops the crazy. Yep, I do that too. I usually have certain milestones in the contract where I'll say, okay, once we get to this point, any changes you want beyond this point, I'm going to charge extra. And I do that also once the commission is finished. So I always make them sign something that says, I accept the commission as complete. If there are any further changes or any other requests, this is the amount I have to get. Because, oh my God, some of these gigs will go on forever and ever and ever, and there's no end in sight. Or sometimes people keep bothering you. They're like, can you send me? And I'm just like, are you serious? Like, quit it. So it can be very, very frustrating. Joey Myers is saying, great resource for how to charge. Ways to get legal agreements and templates is a Graphic Artists Guild Handbook, Ethical Pricing and Guidelines. That's great. Yeah, there's a lot of books out there that will really get into the nitty gritty. I'm not going to get into that specific, but I think that in general, you guys have to know you're worth something, okay? You're not just these people who are going around doing work for nothing. Making artwork is a skill. It is not something that I think you should be doing for free. Lamb Harrison says, people will try to undervalue you all the time. This is a social problem, I think, and we are partly to blame. Doctors and engineers are never expected to do this. Yeah, tell me in the chat, How many people have been asked, can you make me a logo? I want a tattoo. Can you design my wedding card? It just like never ends. I always say no because it's just a big can of worms and it's not something that I want to get into. Okay. Now, another thing that's very important with anything, commissions or, for example, jobs that you're looking for, you guys have to do your research, okay? Don't ever jump into anything without finding stuff out. Like, if somebody asks me for a portrait commission, I Google them. I find out who they are, a little bit about what they want, because sometimes that has to do with commission. If I'm applying for a job and I get an interview and I'm told these three people are going to interview you, I Google them like crazy and I find out who they dated in high school. No, I don't really do that, but I do find out as much as I possibly can about people I might work with, about the company, because you know what? A lot of people do not. You would be shocked how many people do not do their research. It's a real problem. So here's the thing. I was a gallery director for a few years, and I used to always, as an artist, feel very bitter and frustrated that so many galleries would not take submissions. And I just thought, this is so unfair. How am I supposed to ever get into a gallery if they won't even look at the work? That's just ridiculous, right? Then I became a gallery director and I found out why they never take submissions. Because you know what? 95% of artists out there who are sending their stuff out to galleries, they don't do the research. They just send out all these things. They don't find out what gallery shows what. And so what ended up happening, the gallery that I ran, it was part of an academic department at a college. We were not a commercial gallery. And so our focus had nothing to do with selling. It really, the purpose of the gallery was to serve the needs of the art department. We had visiting artists and gallery talks and stuff like that. We were not about selling. And I could not believe how many people would send me stuff as if we were a top-notch commercial gallery. I'm like, you obviously did not do a Google search. Or different things like if you have a gallery and let's say the gallery specializes in photography and they represent photographers. If you're a printmaker, don't send your stuff to them. It is such a waste of your time. It's a waste of their time. So do your research, you guys. It's going to save you time because then there's so many applications you don't need to send out and you're not bothering people who honestly have nothing to do with what you're doing. So really make sure you do that. Annie Helgeson saying advice on how to handle family members repeatedly asking for free art you aren't interested in making. I just say no. I just say, sorry, I don't have time. I never say yes because you know what? Friends and family members, that's a sticky situation because that can go downhill so fast and you can't get rid of those people because they're your friends and your family. Like if you have a bad client and they're terrible to work with, it's easy to get rid of them. These other people, not so much. Just don't go there, guys. It's just really not a good thing. Albert is saying artist submissions aren't helpful. Most galleries find artists via networking and MFA open studios. Yep, because you know something, when I was a gallery director, here's the thing. Putting on a show, it's a ton of work, and you are, in a lot of ways, putting your own butt on the line because you are part of that show. And the thing is, because you're doing that, you don't want to show anybody who you, number one, don't know is going to be good. Because you know what? If they end up being a car crash, they make your life really, really difficult. So I ended up doing exactly what all the other gallery directors do is I hired all my friends. I mean, that's what everybody does. Or I hired people who were my friends who referred people, or it was all through word of mouth. There wasn't a single artist we showed that was a total cold call submission. Everybody was through a personal reference or through networking. So guys, I really recommend that you think about the networking stuff because the networking is so much more powerful. In fact, there was somebody in the Discord, I think a couple of weeks ago, who was saying, oh my gosh, I'm so frustrated. I applied to all these internships and I didn't get a single interview. And I actually said to them, you know what? That's everybody. That's actually super common. Like if you get anything out of those applications, you're extremely lucky. So it really is the word of mouth, you guys, the personal reference. It's the most powerful networking tool. And I'm going to show you some things you can do to help that as much as you possibly can. You always want to get stuff in writing. Never work without a contract, especially with your friends, because this can go so wrong so fast. Eloise Sherrod and Lauren Welch, who are teaching artists here at Art Prof, they're like best friends, but they have a contract because they are working on a collaborative project together. And I actually said to them, I was like, look, guys, having a contract is going to save your friendship because you have to know that you're all on the same page. And I've heard just nightmare situations, people getting into such terrible, sticky circumstances, which were impossible to get out of. And then there were like issues with intellectual property. It's just a mess. Don't ever work without a contract. Also, don't lift a finger until something has been signed. Because you know something, I made this mistake really early on. I had just gotten out of art school. I was probably like 22 or something. And there was this community center and they wanted an image. I think it was for one of the rooms of the community center. And so I spoke to this one director and he was on this committee with all these people. And he said to me, oh, well, I was thinking maybe we could have a painting of a klezmer band because that would be really fun and really festive. And so I thought to myself, ooh, I got to prove to them how driven I am and what a great work ethic I have. And so I actually went through all the trouble. I called up all these local klezmer bands and I managed to find one that was willing to let me actually go to one of their rehearsals so I could take photographs and use those as references for the commission. And then I did all these thumbnail sketches. I did color studies. I made all of these small scale preliminary acrylic paintings. And I was trying to make it look really great. Okay. Then I show up, I bring the stuff, and there's all these people on the committee. None of them are artists. Okay. They're just people that work at the community center. And they hated it. Like they hated all of it. Like I actually had this one woman say to me, I don't know where this came from. This is from like a very fun, flat Matisse-like painting of a klezmer band. She said, this is scary. We can't use this. It's scary. I'm like, what? Like you just would not believe the stuff that comes out of people's mouths at some of these meetings. And then, I'm not joking, by the end of the hour, after we had discussed everything that we had talked about the commission, they decided that they no longer wanted the klezmer band, but they wanted an image of children in a garden of song with music notes and flowers and bushes. And I was like, okay. So I left the meeting and then they never called me again. I was like, I can't believe I did all that work for nothing. And it was my fault because I didn't have them sign a contract. I didn't ask for a deposit. So you guys really need to put your foot down about this stuff. When Willoughby is saying your drawings there, are they on paper? The substance looks translucent and unframed and gorgeous. They are not on paper, Wen. They are actually on this material called Duralar. And Duralar, it's sort of like acetate in that it's like a clear plastic. And what I did was I hand sanded the surface. So they're very textured, actually. You can't really see it in the slide. And then I draw with crayon on top of that. And these drawings you'll look at, they're actually 3 layers of Duralar. So it's literally 3 drawings that are layered on top of each other. So that's why you'll see some of the figures in the drawings look a little bit more ghost-like because of that layered transparency. Okay, so get it in writing, you guys, and get yourself a non-refundable deposit. This is totally reasonable, okay? So people have different amounts that they ask for. Some people will ask for 1/3 of the amount. Some people ask for half. I always make it non-refundable because that way, if for some reason they flake out or cancel the project, I still get paid for a certain amount. Or you could say, split it up into 3 amounts and say, okay, after this is done, we get 1/3. After this is done, you get 2/3. These are all things you guys have to put in place to make sure you don't get screwed because you will. People will take advantage of you. Vaporistic says, am I able to sell my art even if I do art as a hobby? Absolutely. I don't think that people care when they are buying artwork what your resume is. I think they just want the artwork. So absolutely, try it. Give it a shot. Another option that you can do to protect yourself, and this option, I would not do this with an individual client. I would only do this with a company, because this is something, if you're just working with a person, you have to do it after the math, you can get really screwed. And if it's with a company, do it with a reputable company. Don't do it with one that you don't know very well or is not very well established. Like if Adobe did this, I'd be like, fine. Adobe is fine. If Microsoft hired me, I would be fine. But if it's some sketch company, you're not sure, they don't have a proven track record, I probably would not do this. I really would have to do this for somebody I really trust. But anyway, a kill fee is basically a fee that you charge if the project gets killed. And it happens all the time. People commission things, their budget gets cut, or they don't like it, or they want to hire a different artist. Happens all the time. So you can say, for example, this is the kill fee. And so if any point the project gets canceled, I get the kill fee. And so that's another way to protect yourself. Again, put it all in writing. Invoices, always send an invoice. There's a million templates out there, really easy. I just have one that I use in Google Spreadsheets, and it does everything for you. So I really recommend it. I only do this for commissions though. For selling my artwork online, I use Etsy, and Etsy automatically generates the invoice for you. I mean, literally it's like a click and then you get the instant invoice. But if I'm doing a portrait commission, I definitely have to make the invoice on my own. Joey is saying another important tip that seems weird but makes sense years later. Document to whom you sold the art, the information of the artwork, basically a receipt, but it's so important. Yep, that's a really good idea, because actually my friend Kathy Speranza, who I did an interview with a few weeks back, she's a painter who paints flowers and roses, and you guys should watch that video. She's amazing. But she actually had a museum show scheduled for the summer, and she had to go around and find all the people that owned her paintings and had to get the paintings on loan to be shipped to the museum. And you can imagine if she hadn't kept good records, she would have been completely screwed. So that's a really good idea. I like Etsy because it does it for you. So if I want to search, oh, who bought this painting 5 years ago? I don't have to do anything. So that's kind of nice. Lisa H says, in projects, there can be a cancellation payment schedule. Yep. There's many options: kill fee, non-refundable deposit, cancellation payment schedule, whatever you guys want to use, totally fine, but you got to have something in there because people are really going to mess with you. Okay, I am not an accountant. I am not somebody who does taxes, so please do not take what I say as official financial information. I'm just going to give you guys the basics so that if you end up talking to an accountant or talking to somebody to do your taxes, or say you're doing TurboTax or something, you know what to look for and you can get more information there. So I'm not going to give you guys the whole spiel. So for taxes, if you're an artist and you sell your artwork or you do commissions or stuff like that, what you need to have is a Schedule C. So a Schedule C is like this additional income that you have. And if you do a Schedule C, which basically says you have this career as an artist, you can take deductions. So basically, there are all these things that you buy for your art career that you can then deduct from your taxes. It can be a lot of different things. There's tons and tons of categories. And again, if you want ultra specific examples, you got to talk to an accountant. But you can write off art supplies. You can write off travel expenses, commissions and fees. For example, the fact that I pay for MailChimp to maintain an email list, that goes under fees. For example, if you guys enter a juried show and there's an exhibition fee, which there almost always is, that goes under commissions and fees. If you subscribe to a professional journal that you need for your career, for example, I think for a long time I used to subscribe, I think it was College Art Association. They always had a membership fee and I had access to their job board. So that was something I could write off. You can actually write off a piece of your house if there's a particular space in your house that is exclusively for your practice. You can't have it be like a spare bedroom. It has to be just for your office. And you have to like do all the calculations and everything. I forget there's like a limit to how much you can do, but you can do that. and office supplies if you're paying for shipping, if you're buying packing supplies. So these are all things that you can deduct if you guys end up doing a Schedule C. Now, it does depend on whether you get a profit or not, because that does change the numbers. So if one year you declare no profit, then you'll probably get more money back. But then, of course, if you declare a profit, you probably made more money. So it's a little bit complicated, but definitely it's worth doing if you're making a pretty substantial amount of money. Okay, you should keep all your receipts, everything. Okay, you guys see this? 2020 checks, 2019 checks, 2018 checks. Keep everything, okay? Anything that you buy at the art store, a post office receipt, you just get a bunch of envelopes, you drop them in, you put year names on them, and then you know you're set. This is really important. Honestly, it has never gotten to a point where I've had to like produce this thing in court or anything like that, but it's just peace of mind. I tend to be somewhat of a paranoid person, so it helps me, might help some of you guys. Okay, again, I am not a lawyer. I'm not going to give you guys sound legal advice, but I can give you some things to consider when it comes to rights to use your images, because people send me stuff all the time. That's, again, another, oh, can I use your image on my book cover? I'll give you exposure. Or, oh, can I use this as an album cover? Or a lot of people ask me for the tattoo thing. I'm just like, oh my God, are you serious? So yes, happens all the time. You can sell the rights to use an image for one-time use. That's usually what I do. So I'll give somebody permission. I'll say, okay, you can, for this fee, you can use this image for your book cover. And you can, if you want, sell all the rights. I mean, you can sell whatever version that's in between one-time use and everything. But honestly, I really would not sell all the rights. I mean, maybe if Jeff Bezos gave me $1 billion, I would. But, or I don't know, I'd do it for less than that. But anyway, I don't recommend doing that, because that's basically you're releasing all of your stuff to somebody else. So I think that's a bad idea. I did have somebody once who bought one of my physical artworks, and they actually wrote me and said, oh, I really like this. I want to put it in my book and turn it into a character. Can I do that? I'm like, no. They're like, but I bought the artwork. I'm like, you don't own the image. I own the image. You own the artwork, because basically once you make something, you own it. That's pretty much what it is. I mean, you guys have to talk to a copyright lawyer about the specifics of it, but people who buy the physical painting, they don't own that image. You still own that image. So you have to make sure that people understand that. I know a lot of people get very worried about their artwork being stolen, and I know that there are a lot of horror stories online about illustrators having their stuff taken and it got put in a t-shirt and then Target sold it. I mean, I don't know if it really was Target, just some company. So a lot of artists will say to me, oh, well, maybe I should put a watermark on the image. So if you guys look at the slide here, on the right-hand side, you can see I've written claralou.com across it. Don't do it, guys. I think it looks really tacky. And honestly, if I wanted to steal it, I could just Photoshop it out. It's not that hard, actually. I mean, it depends on the watermark. But the only way you guys can truly protect yourself is to never, ever post anything online. That is the only way you can protect yourself. And I don't think any of us want to do that. I mean, my feeling about it is I see my stuff all over the place. People are always putting poems on my artwork. I don't really know why. They always seem to like to change the color too, or they'll like add extra layers or something like that. I've definitely seen that. Yes, it's annoying, but it doesn't bother me so much because people aren't making money off of that. That's okay. Now, if Target took one of my drawings and made a line of handbags and made tons of money, yes, I would call my lawyer. But I don't think it happens as often as people think. I think it's just that a lot of those articles, when they do happen, they get circulated a lot amongst artists for good reason. I mean, people need to know about that. I just don't think it happens as much as people think. So I have yet to really had an issue with that. I have never had a friend who actually did go to a copyright lawyer and have a whole lawsuit and anything. So I don't think it's that common, but it is something to be aware of. So here's an example. This is somebody who actually did purchase one-time rights to the image for the cover of their book. It was for a professor. at an English department. And you can see, I mean, he did his own little funky thing. Maybe the graphic designer did. I have no idea. But he changed the color, and the top part is actually the painting flipped upside down and cropped. And so if you license your work, you sort of have to be okay seeing that happen, or you need to have something in writing that says you may not alter the image. I don't really care because it's like, okay, yeah, you paid me, that's fine. Plus, you don't have to do anything. Like when somebody asks for use of your image, you just give them the file. So it's not a huge amount of work. I mean, of course, the work to make the artwork was a ton of work. I'm just saying that I don't worry about that so much. Wen is saying the only really useful watermark I've seen is just a name and website discreetly on the image, so viewers can find you when the work gets posted without your name, and it will thanks to Pinterest. Absolutely. I think I had a chart that I created. It was the home art supplies page, and I knew it was going to go around because it was very popular, but I did the same thing. It wasn't a watermark, but I put the Art Prof logo on it because I knew people were going to do that. So in that case, yes, but I think otherwise the watermark's not that useful. Okay, the most powerful tool you guys have in artists is word of mouth. This is the most powerful way to get yourself out there. So the question is, how do you do that? You stay in touch with social media. You stay in touch with your teachers. I mean, a lot of the art school students, I don't think they realize that their professors are the easiest, closest door that they can step into the professional world with. And so I keep in touch with a bunch of students. There's also a ton of students I never hear from again after I have them in class. And it makes a big difference, you guys, because you know something? I hire people all the time to do all kinds of things, or people will email me and say, hey, do you know somebody who can do this? And so I'm constantly passing names on to other people. And you know what? Sometimes when I'm like, I need somebody for this thing, who do I know? You know what I do? I'm not joking. This is what I do. I go and I think about who's been commenting on my Instagram, who have I interacted with recently, and I also go into my Instagram and I see who I follow. I'm like, oh, these are all the people I follow. These are the people who I keep in touch with. I'm going to look at them. If you're not on that list, I forget about you. So easy, because I have so many students and colleagues, people I interact with, that if you don't interact with me, I'm going to forget about you pretty fast. Unfortunately, there's just so many people. So guys, get on social media, stay in touch with people, don't disappear. Because, you know, I actually had a student many years ago. They emailed me and they said, oh, I need a letter for my master's program. And I felt so bad about this. I wrote them back. I said, I'm really sorry. I don't remember who you are. And they sent me all their artwork. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I can't remember the artwork. It was from like 10 years ago. And the thing is, it's like, if that student had kept in touch with me over social media, I probably would have written them the letter if I'd remembered them. But they didn't keep in touch. And so I actually said, I'm sorry, I really just can't write you the letter because I can't remember who you are. It's okay, you guys, to ask for help. I cannot believe how many people don't want to do this. It's really astounding to me. I don't know if it's a pride thing or if people are lazy or if they think it won't help them. But I can tell you so many people helped me get Art Prof off the ground. And if I had not been willing to ask for help, it would never have happened. I'm doing stuff this whole week. I'm working on this thing for Art Prof where I am having to ask for a lot of favors, okay? Favors from people I maybe don't even know that well or who I've never met before. But you know what? My feeling, you guys, is no skin off my back. Like, okay, I write this person, they ignore it, fine. It doesn't hurt me. I mean, it's fine. That's just the way it is. So you should never be afraid to do that. I mean, there's a way to do it that is less pushy and less invasive, because there's definitely ways to do it that are not cool. But if you can navigate things and ask the right way, wow, you can get results, because I got results this week. And I was like, whoa, I can't believe I pulled that off. And there was such a part of me that was like, oh, don't ask. You don't want to ask. And then I was just like, send the email. And then it's like a couple hours later, I'm going, oh my God. So it does work, but you have to get over that challenge of wanting to ask for help. Haley Michelle says, I have a hard time asking for help because I'm shy and I don't like bothering people. Well, but you know something though, Haley? You've got nothing to lose. Honestly, the worst thing that can happen when you ask for help, you get ignored. That's it. I've never had anybody shout at me for asking for help. I mean, I think if anything, I've gotten people just saying, oh, I'm really sorry. In fact, I had somebody this week, I asked for a favor, and they actually wrote back and they said, oh, well, I'm not very good at this, but here's somebody who is. And so that happens a lot where maybe they can't do it or they're too busy and they'll pass you on to somebody else. So it's not a bad thing, you guys. I know it's hard. Trust me, it was hard for me. And I've been asking people for help like my whole life. And it does not get easier, but you have to do it if you want to get results. Nate Garcia says, what are some wrong ways to ask? Great question. Well, I would say that student who didn't speak to me in 10 years, that is not somebody you ask a reference from. I would also say if you make it all about you, it's not a good thing. For example, a couple people who I contacted this week, I jog their memory a little bit. I don't just say, give me this. I just come in and I say, we did this together. It's been so nice to see what you've been up to, because I follow them on Instagram or something and I'll say, oh, I really enjoyed this new series. Like, I always start with them. I never start with myself. And you always end with something like, I understand, it's okay if you can't do it. But thank you so much for listening anyway. Something like that. And also you keep it short, because if you're asking somebody for a favor, don't tell them the story of your life. They don't have time for that. And I think that you also have to figure out, okay, who is the in? Because we had somebody we were trying to contact and somebody said to me on the staff, they're like, oh, well, I know their spouse. Do I talk to them or do I talk to the spouse? I was like, you talk to the spouse. Don't talk to the person you're trying to get to first if you know the spouse better. It's very complicated. So yeah, it depends on the situation, but you can't make it all about me, 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 me. You got to think about it from their point of view and what they have to maybe gain from that situation. Now, here's a question I get a lot from people. Should I do it myself? This is a really big question that I think a lot of artists struggle with, because there are certain things that I really think are important to farm out to other people who are so much better at it than you that it's actually not worth your time. Because a lot of students actually say to me, they say, oh, custom framing's so expensive. I think I'll just frame them myself. And I think most of them have not figured out, number one, how hard it is to frame stuff. Number two, how expensive the supplies are. And number three, that you will never do it as well as a custom framer. And the thing is, framing looks terrible when it's badly done. It looks so bad. There's such a big difference. And so I think that there's very few artists I know who I really think could pull off their own frame. There are certain things where I think it's a little bit less visible whether you should do it or not. Like, for example, this situation that you're looking at here, this was actually at the Davis Museum. So I was in a group show there, and the museum had a whole staff of contractors. They were like professional art installers, and these guys were so good. Oh my God. I was like blown away by how professional they were. They were so precise. They were really, really good at what they were doing. I mean, in that situation, I didn't have a choice because it was the museum. They were going to definitely do something like that. But I've also had situations like photographing your own artwork. I would love to hire a professional photographer, but it costs so much to hire a professional photographer that for me, just getting a DSLR camera, getting a lighting kit, that is such a great investment. And then there's the convenience of doing it whenever you want. And so that's one where it really is, I think, okay. I have friends who hire professional photographers. A lot of my sculptor friends do that. For them, maybe it's really worth it. So it's hard to gauge. I think you really have to talk to people who have done it before and see. And this is the same thing. This is like a mechanic. Like, you have to find the good framer in town. You have to be referred to the good photographer in town. It's all word of mouth. Like, these people don't advertise themselves, but it's really worth it to have these relationships. Let's see. Night of Dreams says, every time I ask for a favor, I always think about how to repay them. Stressful when I feel like I owe people something. Yeah, I mean, I think that there is definitely small ways to do that. I mean, if they help you promote something, you should help them, or you should offer something. Or sometimes I'll do a trade. Like I'll say to somebody, okay, I'll shoot this for you if you do this for me. And that's sometimes honestly the best way for me to do it, because a lot of the people I work with are pretty high up on the food chain. And it's like, I could never afford to pay them what they're actually worth. So sometimes doing a trade is a lot better. And Puck Puck says, yes or no, depending on what it is. I do my own marketing and stuff after asking for help, and it didn't work out. Yeah, it depends. You really have to just try it. I mean, if you try it and you're like, oh my God, that was horrible, I never want to do that again. Sometimes that's a good way to do it. For example, if you have people you know who are going to definitely do a good job and you don't have to worry about it, then maybe that is the better option. Melanie Morales is saying, recommendation for a lighting kit. All right, my recommendation for that is I get all my camera stuff at B&H Photo. It's basically the Amazon of photo and video equipment. They have everything. They have a parts department. It's an incredible service. The only thing that you have to know about them is that it's run by people who are Orthodox Jews. And so you can't buy anything Friday night and you can't buy anything on Saturday. Like literally their website shuts down and then you can buy stuff on Sunday. So sometimes if you don't remember that and you need something right away, it can be a problem. But they're great. They're wonderful. And if you go to this link, Melanie, the link is in the video description below. I do have links for a particular lighting kit, but it's basically the ones that you see in the photo. I like getting the ones that have umbrellas because it helps make the lighting a little bit more diffuse, and it comes with the stands and the lights, and it works out really well. So I really recommend doing something like that. Okay, let me see if oops, sorry, I gotta go back. Here we go. Oops, sorry, I thought I was a lot further along. Okay, let's go back to this slide. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Trying to find the sweet spot to price oil painting portraits 18 by 24 or bigger, says Ro Mario. I would really recommend that you watch our video that is about pricing artwork, because we go over a lot of concrete tips for how to do that. Now, the thing about networking, you guys, all this stuff I'm talking about, the word of mouth, getting to know people, asking for favors, it takes a while, okay? Let me show you this chart, okay? This chart that I'm showing you right now, it tells you how I got my first college teaching job and how I got my first solo exhibition. Now, this chart you're looking at, I believe is a series, I think it's a 2 to 3 year period. So I know it looks really easy, but it was not. It took 2 or 3 years to actually do, okay? Let me explain to you how this works. This is how, to me, people understand the whole networking thing. Okay, so when I was a graduate student, I kept in touch with one of my undergrad professors, and I'd go down to see him every now and then. And he said, oh, well, you're in New York City. You should go to the Southern Graphics Conference, which is a big printmaking conference. He said, this year it's at Rutgers University. It's an hour train ride from New York. You should go. There's this cool event called Open Portfolio where everybody just throws their prints on the table super casually. You walk around, you meet a lot of printmakers. I was like, okay, cool, I'll go. And so I go to the conference and I do the Open Portfolio thing. And this group of printmakers comes by and one of them looks at my work and he says, oh my God, I love your prints so much. And I was like, thank you. And they were like, oh, well, I'm the department head at this art school and I love your work. You should send me your stuff and maybe we can keep in touch. And I was like, okay. And so I did. Let me tell you, a lot of people don't. A lot of people do not follow up. But a few years later, I had my first college teaching job. Did not happen right away, but I emailed him and I let him know what I was doing, and one of my favorite colleagues today. So it's amazing how it works out. Okay, now, because I was at that printmaking conference, the other people that were hanging out with this department head, there were these women, and they said to me, you should apply for membership in the Boston Printmakers because we love your work and we think you'd be a great member. So I applied for membership. I got in. And every single year they have this annual meeting where they go over all these logistics. But honestly, it's like the best part of the meeting is getting to eat because printmakers apparently are great cooks. And number two, having the chance to do that open portfolio thing where we just bring our prints, we walk around, we look at super, super casual. Okay. So one year we had the meeting, it was at the Danforth Museum, which is a regional museum in Massachusetts. and I showed my work. People are walking around, whatever. Okay. Afterwards, this woman comes up to me and she says, "Hello, I'm the director of the museum. I want to give you a solo show." And I went, "What?" Like, I didn't even know who she was. I didn't know she was there. She just happened to be amongst this group of people. And boom, there it was. It was my first solo show. You guys, you never know who could be watching. And that's why I tell my students, you guys, you need to show yourselves in your best light. You would think, oh, it's just this like luncheon with these other printmakers. Like, who would think that that really mattered? But it actually really, really did. So networking, guys, it works. It really, really does, for real. It's just that it's very tricky. Cold calls, these are worth it, you guys. They really are. You're going to shoot off 50 emails if you get one reply. It's worth it. And again, I know a lot of people don't like doing these, but you know what? I did 3 cold calls today to people I had never met before, and I got replies. That was sort of remarkable. I mean, I was promoting something that I think looked good, so maybe that had something to do with it. But anyway, cold calls are worth it. But you got to contact a person, okay? You really should not be sending to info@hyperallergic.com. You want to write to ksmithstone@hyperallergic.com, because otherwise you just end up in the slush pile. So that's where what I said earlier, do your research. So if you guys find that you're writing an email to dear editor or dear gallery director, that is not worth your time, okay? You want to be writing to Mr. Smith, to a very particular email. Joey is saying, keeping a modern chart of all your connections can help so much. I think it was helpful for me, Joey, because it made me realize that all these little things you do, they actually do pan out. It's just they don't do it right away. So oftentimes you can feel as an artist that what you're doing doesn't matter. And oh my gosh, I put all that time in and it didn't work out. You don't know until a couple of years has passed by. You've actually been able to reap the rewards of what you've been building. That's why going to events, really helpful. I know we can't do it now, but going to artist lectures, going to openings, going to conferences, these are all valuable. I get a lot of questions about print materials, or people who say, I hate social media, I refuse to use it. That's fine. I mean, people can do what they want. I can tell you, though, I have not printed a hard copy postcard in 10 years. And when people give me a hard copy postcard, you know what happens? It goes in the recycle bin. Like, I just can't hold on to it, because then I'm like, oh man, I got to look at it. I got to type it in. Like, if you send me an email with your show information, then it's in my email. I can access it quickly. So postcards, I guess they're nice to have, but they're not important the way that they used to be. You can, if you want, have like small catalogs. Like, this is a really small catalog that the Simmons College Art Gallery, when I had a solo show there, they printed it for me, and the curator wrote a short statement. So that was really nice. I mean, I didn't have to do anything. I mean, it was great. The gallery did everything for me. So sometimes things like that are nice. I have also printed hard copy catalogs. So this is a catalog that I published a long time ago. I think this is in like 2012. I also published this book. It's very short. It's a quick read. You could probably read it in about an hour and a half. It's just really quick, basic tips for artists. And so print on demand changed everything, because then you don't have to buy 100 copies and then hope you sell them. You can just do print on demand, which is phenomenal. Song Kang, who has been a guest here several times on Art Prof, she has also published books and done very well with them. And I think she actually did a limited edition, which was also really handy, because then it becomes a little bit more valuable. Grants and residencies, fabulous when you can get them. Artist grants, you got to be careful, because they oftentimes have very stringent guidelines about who is eligible to apply. Residencies, there's a huge range. I mean, there's some where they cover everything and you just show up and you make artwork. It's amazing. There's other residencies where, wow, you got to pay a lot. And so for the artist residencies, you got to read the fine print. You got to see what they cover and what they don't. Some places give you stipends, some don't. Some pay for your room and board, some do not. So do your research. Nate Garcia is saying, do you find more value in sketchbooking or making final works? As far as making money, final works seem more valuable on the surface. I mean, they are in that most people do not sell their sketchbooks. And so, technically speaking, that is what's going to directly make you an income. However, I think you can't make that funnel work without the sketchbooking. So, in my opinion, they're both equally valuable. Now, the thing about these grants and residencies, you guys have to do it over and over and over again. Like, I have students who will actually say things to me like, oh, I applied for this residency. I really hope I get it. I'm like, no, you guys, this is what you do. You apply and then you forget about it. Don't think about it anymore because, oh my gosh, it is so hard to get a grant. The residencies, I think it depends. It depends on the amount of money that they're offering. But there's so many artists out there and there are so few grants and residencies. There's probably more residencies than there are grants, but they're really competitive. By the way, if you would like a list of artist residencies, they are on artprof.org. Marguerite is asking, what's a residency? Okay, well, usually it's something where there's a place that you travel to. Like there's some really famous ones like the MacDowell Colony. There's the Rome Prize where you're basically in residence in Rome. Those are really prestigious. Those are hard to get. But you live there. They provide a studio space and residencies vary. I mean, the Rome Prize is like a year. I think MacDowell is like a month to several months. It really depends. Some residencies is like a week. So it really, really varies, but they're competitive and they can be really great. I know people who have done residencies and had a great time. I really can't do it because I have a family and I can't leave for 6 months. But I know for some artists, this can be really, really excellent. Now, here's an example of why you should apply again and again and again and again. This is why. Because the Massachusetts Cultural Council, they have artist fellowships that they give every year. They rotate disciplines. So if you want to apply in painting, you apply every other year. It's a very big fellowship. It's one of the bigger grants. A lot of the artist grants tend to be $2,000, $3,000. I mean, there's big ones like the Guggenheim is $45,000 a year, but it's crazy competitive. And then there's other grants that are sort of in between. But Massachusetts Cultural Council is like $10,000, which for an artist grant is pretty big. So anyway, I have been applying to this grant since 1998. I applied every year that I was eligible for a discipline. So some years I could apply every year. Other times I'd have to wait till the next cycle. But the point is, I started applying in 1998 and I won in 2018. So this is why you guys need to apply again and again and again and again. Okay? This is not something you apply once and then give up on. It's something you really need to spend time and you got to just keep at it. Say thank you. Those people that give you an extra hand. There were a lot of people this week who agreed to do favors for me. They're all getting mega thank yous from me at multiple times when they give me their stuff. Once the thing is over, I'm going to tell them again. I'm going to remind them. I'm going to be out there offering myself to do whatever I can to help them out. This goes a long way. Don't burn any bridges, guys, okay? You don't have to be everybody's best friend. That's not important. But you got to be nice, okay? A lot of students, they always want to know, what is that one piece of career advice that you want to give that is most important? This is it. Don't burn any bridges. Because you think that these people you meet really quickly don't really matter, but they do, okay? If you're in art school right now, you're waiting in line at the cafeteria, and there's somebody behind you, they might be on a search committee hiring you someday. You might be interviewing them someday. They might be giving you your first gallery show. You have no idea. I know it sounds really weird because you think, what? Sally? Yeah, really? Yes. In about 20 years, Sally could be running a regional museum. You have no idea until you get older and then you realize, wow, we're really old now. So it's really, really strange. Don't burn any bridges. Be nice. It goes a long way because the art world is a small place, guys. It's a little clubhouse where kids hang out in the neighborhood. I will go to some random conference in like Wisconsin and I'm like, oh, hey, Sarah. Yeah, it's like the same 15 people everywhere you go. You just run into each other. So please be nice. Naomi B is saying, what's the best way to suss out of a residency is legitimate or good? I mean, I just would say you have to look at, number one, who has been there before? Okay. So if you look at, usually they have like a list of artists who have attended the residency before. You can also look at if they charge exorbitant fees. Obviously, if the residency covers everything and it's a long residency, it's really prestigious. Like the Rome Prize is super prestigious. Like that is one. I don't know the exact specifics, but you basically like live in Rome and make stuff for a year. That's it. And there's other residencies, if you look at it, they're like, you must pay for room and board, you pay for supplies, you pay for a student. And then it's like, whoa, what? This is not really a residency. So I think usually an indication of that is how much they cover and for how long. And so if you find that you're looking at a residency, you have to pay for almost everything, I don't really think that's worth it. Albert is saying there's a residency rating website. Oh, yes, there is. I can't remember the name. If somebody knows, put it in the chat because that would be really, really great. You guys got to follow up, okay? This is how I got my first college teaching job. If I had not followed up with that department head, I would have disappeared. Never would have happened. And you know something? The reason I got to teach at other schools, like School of the Museum of Fine Arts and Wellesley College and RISD, where I am now, it's because I got that first college teaching job. That was my entrance into academia. If I hadn't had that job, it would not have led to other ones. So everything builds upon everything else. There is nothing that is going to make it worse. I mean, unless you like really burn a bridge with somebody. I'm just saying in terms of following up, it does not hurt. I mean, you don't want to be a jerk about it, but obviously if you're polite about it and you don't do it too much, you can get away with it. Haley is saying, what's the purpose of going somewhere else to make art? I think for a lot of people, it's focused, concentrated time to only do that. I can tell you guys, I can't get anything done here because I have my family and it's hard to focus. And if you told me, Clara, you can go hang out in Lake Wisconsin for 3 weeks by yourself in a studio, I'd be like, I'll be there. Like, I would get so much work done. And I also think for a lot of people, a change of scenery can be very helpful. And a lot of residencies as well, you will have other artists who are present who you can also interact with. And some of the residencies, it's not just visual artists. Like some of them, there'll be poets and composers. I know MacDowell is like that. The Rome Prize is also people from all disciplines. So it's also an opportunity just to be in a concentrated creative environment. Because honestly, after art school, you're not really going to get that. And so a residency is sort of a small version of that. All right, let's quickly talk about press. So if you guys have a show or an event or something and you want to try to get in touch with a journalist, it's tricky, but I do think that the first step to getting that started is a press release. Press release is really helpful. Having a press kit is really helpful. So that way, if somebody does call you and they say, oh, I need your bio, I need your headshot. I'll tell you, I had 2 people this week. I needed the bio and headshot, and they just sent me a link to their press kit. I was like, oh, thank you. You're great. Everybody else, I had to be like, send me a JPEG. Do I do that? Like these other people were great. So it's really, really nice to be able to do that. I do find that a lot of press do not have their emails public for good reason, because I'm sure they would be bombarded if they made their emails public by all these people trying to get in touch with them. And so this, for me as an artist, this is the only compelling reason for me to be on Twitter, because actually Twitter, I think for fine artists is not really that helpful. I think a lot of illustrators and animators are on Twitter. It seems like they use it, but from what I've seen, the fine art world doesn't use it that much, but arts journalists do and arts writers do. And so I've used Twitter a lot to get in touch with people that way. And oftentimes people will check their Twitter way more than they check their email. And I have tweeted to people who are pretty high up on the food chain in journalism who I never would have gotten an email from. So I'll just tweet something to them like really casual. And sometimes that's enough for them to just like see your name, because it's like anytime you retweet or like a tweet or reply to something, they're seeing your name. That's the important thing. So oftentimes some of the stuff I talk about on Twitter is very vapid, but it's like it gets you recognized. It's really important to have just these little silly conversations every now and then. Here's an example of what can happen with press. So I want you guys to not get discouraged if you're having trouble getting in touch with a journalist, because it's very, very hard to get in touch with them. And if you actually make it all the way to the article, kudos to you, because it's really, really hard. Alex Lloyd is saying, do you think grad school is worth it from a career perspective? As a gallery assistant, my curator said the value of an MFA is declining. Alex, I would say that is a topic for another stream because it's huge. But what I'd recommend is we do have a playlist in our YouTube channel that is specifically all about MFAs. I recently did an interview with Layla Faye, who is a first-year grad student at Yale. And so we had a great conversation about that, and we're going to do more. So I'd recommend watching that because there's a lot of information. So, sorry, let me go back to this slide. So look at this, okay? This email chain that I started with this journalist, it started in July. And oh my God, I think I must have followed up 5 times. And I think I waited a month or a month and a half between each follow-up because I didn't want to be a pain. And every time it was like, oh my God, are you serious? Like July 11th, I'll look at your site, talk to my editor. 2 weeks later, thanks for follow-up. I'd like to pitch it. September 26th, appreciate your patience. Are you free next week? So it took from July to September for them to actually try to book something with me. And then finally we booked something and I wanted to die because I was so nervous about that working out. And then something happened and they had to push. I was like, oh my God, we're never going to do this. And so finally we did it. And it worked out, and I ended up with the article, and it's great when you end up with the article. This is not this particular journalist. I'm just pointing out to this article as one that we actually had that actually worked out really well. But I think what's really hard about the journalists is that you never know what their availability is, because sometimes if there's like mega news and something big is happening, they get put on that, and then all these other things that they're working on get pushed back. So actually, a lot of the time it's not you. It's just because they're journalists and they're super, super busy. But if you can get through to them, it's great. Now, one thing, though, that you got to be careful about, just because the journalist talks to you and schedules an appointment and cousin does something, it does not mean you're getting an article. I don't believe it until it's on the internet. If it's not on the internet, I don't believe it. Because I actually got on a phone call. I talked to a journalist at a national newspaper for an hour for many years ago, and I was like, oh, I am in, like fist pump. Nothing. I was like, are you serious? You talked to me for an hour and you're not going to use this? And so I just don't believe it until I see it. I mean, usually there's clues that they really are serious, but even then you don't know. So that's what I think is really, really hard. But you guys can really do a lot on your own. I mean, we published 2 articles in the New York Times on their learning network section, and that was all from us reaching out to them. Again, not a fast process. It took time to actually do that, but you can take initiative and you can make these things happen if you are patient and not a jerk and able to really work the system as much as you possibly can. Here's the thing, guys. All these tips, networking, could be a dead end, could be a huge opportunity that oh my God, explodes your career. You don't know. That's the thing that a lot of people really have trouble with. You don't know if that comment on Twitter mattered. You don't know if that email you sent is going to get you in. You don't know if that 4th follow-up that you were not going to send because you were so embarrassed, but you sent it anyway, oh my God, got you in the door. You just don't know. I think this is what's so, so difficult about it. Anything's possible, though. So you guys have to keep your minds open for all of this. All right, I know there are a lot of questions that people were asking me, so I'm going to go onto the Discord right after the stream. I'm going to hang out there for a little bit. So those of you guys whose questions I did not get to, go to the video description below and get the invite link to the Discord. I'm happy to talk to you guys there. Check out artprof.org. Lots of fun stuff, all free for you guys. Subscribe to our channel and join the Art Prof family. Thank you so much to our top Patreon supporters who make everything possible here at Art Prof. Thank you everybody here for your thoughtful comments, for all your suggestions, and for helping each other out. I think you guys are such a great supportive community. So happy that we have this wonderful corner of the internet where we can hang out. Thank you everybody. Everyone stay safe. I'll see you next time. Bye.